I'd bet this isn't the first video you've seen about the most fun, cheapest cars out there. Maybe not even your first one about $3,000 cars specifically. But trust me, if you listen to a good amount of other people with these lists and go around to STI and New Edge GT owners like, would you take $3,000? You might start to notice a pattern of no's coming your way.
I've come to bargain.
You've come to die.
Don't care. Still don't care.
Dormammu, I've come to bargain.
Well, to help people find good cars that they can actually expect to find for $3,000 or very close to that without getting super lucky or settling for something with a lot of miles, here are 8 of the best cars to look at with a few honorable mentions at the end. Let's get into it. Obviously, there are those great deals out there when someone wants to get rid of a car fast or doesn't care too much about the money, and prices can vary widely depending on where you live. But for this list, I tried to only include ones I could find fairly easily for no more than a couple hundred over $3,000 on Facebook Marketplace, because negotiating a couple hundred down is commonly expected. Because of how the used car market is now and the fact that $3,000 is the lowest limit I've ever set, I decided to up my mileage limit to around $120,000 or $130,000, because realistically, if you're on a budget, that's not even a terrible amount of miles. I also stuck to sportier cars with this, but it's not too hard to find SUV or truck options too if you're considering those. But without further ado, the first fun, great looking, cheap car that's an awesome bargain is the PT Cruiser.
Gotcha, bitch!
No, not actually. It's the 98 to 2012 Crown Vic. I talked about these a while ago in my under 5K video, but they also fit into the 3K bracket. They might not make crazy horsepower, and maybe they weigh pretty much 4,000 pounds, so they've got a slow as hell 0 to 60 time, but they also have great sounding 4.6 liter V8s, a surprisingly good amount of modding potential for the look and power, and you'll be the guy pissing off other people on the road because they'll think there's a cop behind them when really it's just you enjoying your cheap V8. These are one of those cars for me that's like, I don't really have a great reason why I want one, but someday I just kind of hope that I can get one for like super cheap, just as like a fun project when I already have other cars. I don't know if other people feel the same, but it does kind of feel like these have gotten more popular recently. Next up is the 2000 to 2005 Dodge Neon. These bad boys do come with only 130 horsepower and torque from either a 1.6 or 2 liter inline 4 engine, but they only weigh around 2,600 pounds, which is pretty cool. A lot of lists like these will talk about the Neon SRT4s with turbocharged engines, but I don't really think it'd be realistic in today's market to get an SRT4, especially because it seems like they've become kind of collectible. The normal Neons don't even look that bad though, and if you really wanted to, you could probably turbo it someday for the extra power and make it look a little better, but even if you don't, these aren't terrible looking cars. If you think you can handle it, another option is the generation before, which had an ACR trim, which has to be on the same level as an ACR Viper.
Are you sure about that?
Actually though, if you're not a big Neon person, the Dodge Intrepids are also great options. They come with V6s making between 200 and 250 horsepower, and in my opinion, they're better looking than the normal Neons. Unless we're comparing this to an SRT4, I think the wider, more hunkered down look with a cleaner back end is more appealing than the normal Neons, but they're both good options. Third for the list is Cadillac Devilles made between 2000 and 2005. Beyond immediately becoming cool because you can tell people you drive a DeVille, these came with 4.6 liter Northstar V8 engines. The only real downside to these is that although you can get them for $3,000, they're most commonly priced between $3,500 and $4,000, and they weigh almost as much as your mom.
But anywho,
they're very slightly higher than Crown Vics, but they make more power with between 275 and 300 and 285 and 300 pound-feet of torque, so it kind of makes up for it. These are quicker than the Vics with a 0 to 60 time of about 8 seconds, which isn't too bad considering these cars are for $3,000 stock. And don't get me wrong, the Vics are great cars and I think it'd be a ton of fun to have one, especially if you could do some work on it, but I feel like these Caddies are a pretty sweet deal all around. That is minus being slightly rougher on gas than some of these other cars because of the V8, which isn't great if you want a cheap car, but other than that, I think they're awesome. I know they're kind of big and obviously meant to be more sophisticated looking, but for some reason, I kind of dig the slightly shorter and wider front end than you normally see on these Caddies. The next best $3,000 car is the second-gen Chrysler Springs made between 01 and 06. I'm not completely positive that's how you pronounce it, but I'm just gonna go with it.
Chrysler Sebring.
What an idiot! Oh, what a loser!
These came with a few different engine options. You can get them with a 2.4 or 2.7 liter inline 4 or a 2.7 or 3 liter V6. These make between 142 and 200 horsepower and between 158 and 190 pound-feet of torque. I really don't think these are bad looking for a cheap car, and you've got some options with them because you can get them as a sedan, convertible, or a coupe or coupe. I'd also recommend you keep an eye out for Chrysler 300s because those are some decent looking cheap cars, but I wasn't able to find a lot of them for cheap enough myself. Those are mostly known for being great budget muscle cars if you can get a V8, but if your budget's $3K, I don't know how likely it is that you'll find a good enough V8 deal, but the V6 might be a better option for now so you can save up for what you really want anyway. The 300 also might be a better option because it's definitely a beefier car. These Sebrings aren't the safest and actually tested poorly for official side collision tests, but if you don't feel worried about that stuff or you won't be doing a lot of commuting, then they might still be a great option. As the fifth car on the list, we've got the 05 and 06 Chevrolet Cobalts, which were also the Pontiac G5s from 07 to 2010. The naturally aspirated inline 4s in these made between 145 and 170 horsepower. I think clean two-door versions of these can look pretty cool, but even if you end up with a four-door because you've got friends like a weirdo, then that's not a bad deal either. Some people say you can get a supercharged or turbocharged one for cheap, but I definitely haven't seen any in good enough condition for the list. If you can manage to get your hands on one of those, the Screamy Screw one makes 205 horsepower and the Sucky Snail version makes around 260.
Not bad, not bad.
Next up is one of the lightest cars here along with the Neon, which is the 98 to 07 Ford Focuses. These only weigh between 2,500 and 2,800 pounds, but similar to the Neons, the downside is that there's not a lot of power in them. They come with either 2 or 2.3 liter inline 4s for the trims you'd probably be able to find for $3,000, making between 125 and 154 horsepower. So you might have a tough time getting up to speed on the highway, but you should definitely feel how light it is in turns. These would probably be great autocross cars. I'm not personally a huge fan of the first gen looks. If you can get a second gen with good miles for cheap enough, then I'd probably take one of those. I don't think those look that great either, but you'd at least get the benefits of having a slightly newer car. I didn't see any of the second gens for cheap enough though, and it's not like the first gens are a bad option. There's still great deals here. Second to last is an SN95 Mustang.
What?
I know. I kind of made fun of people talking about $3,000 Mustangs, but I'm not talking about a New Edge Mustang GT that works perfectly. In reality, a New Edge GT for that cheap is going to be in rough shape unless the car market around you is a lot different than the one within a good distance of me, or you buy it from a friend or family. It'll almost definitely have some issues, the paint will probably be a little messed up, and it'll most likely have a lot of miles. But there are other great Mustang alternatives. You should be able to find SN95 V6s and even some New Edge V6s in decent condition with acceptable miles for the list. There's also a chance you'd be able to find pre-update SN95 GTs, and although I'm not the biggest fan of those compared to other Mustangs, that could still be an awesome bargain. I usually say I'd take an older trim V8 over a newer trim V6, but in this case, I'm not completely sure. I can't deny clean older ones can look really good even with minor appearance mods, and that V8 sound would obviously be more fun than a V6, although none of those were great on power. But if you're somebody who's limited to a low budget, then maybe a New Edge V6 would be a better option, because you'll save on gas, probably insurance, and theoretically a newer car should last longer and be more comfortable with all other things the same. If you really want an SN95 and that's your end goal, then go for the older GT and stick with that. But if you've got plans for a more expensive performance car in the future, then maybe just hold off with a V6 for now. The cheapest option here would be a pre-facelift V6, and you can still definitely have fun with that and save the extra money, or you can use the whole amount and try to get one of these with lower miles or in nicer condition. It's really kind of up to what you want out of these cars. The final best American car for around $3,000 here is an 03 to 07 first-gen Cadillac CTS. Although I think the Devilles look better, these are also not bad looking caddies, and as long as you don't get an old person color, they can even look a little sporty. They originally had 2.8 liter V6s, which were then replaced as the base with 3.2s, and 3.6s were offered as a higher option. These made 220 and 210 horsepower for the base models and about 250 for the bigger engine. I originally thought these would be about as fast or as slow, up to you, as the Crown Vics, but they're a little quicker with about a 7.5 second 0 to 60 time. Obviously that is just an added bonus for these though, because the speed and power aren't even the point of these class mobiles. Honorable mentions are a C4 Corvette because it's a cheap, fast V8, but it's also kinda old for the list since I tried to stick to newer cars, and it's not easy to find them for this cheap. I feel like I was kind of obligated to have them in because I did flip one myself for about $1,000 profit, and the car only cost me $2,900. When I got it, it was already in pretty good condition and had just over 70,000 miles, so it wasn't bad at all. If you want more on that car, how I flipped it, and a step-by-step to start car flipping yourself, I made a whole video that might help you. Other honorable mentions are the awesome Grand Prix, which have been great deals for years. Some trims even come with supercharged engines, and I've seen a lot of people mention them in the past, so the deals definitely have to be out there. When I looked around in a big radius from where I live, though, I didn't see any that were cheap enough. I don't know if that's because of used car prices being higher right now or just unlucky timing on my part, but I didn't think I should officially add them. The final honorable mention is the Mercury Grand Marquis, which is pretty much just a Crown Vic. Enough said. There you have it. Those are 8 of the best fun cars you can expect to find in all-right condition for $3 grand. Prices depend on location, and there are ways to get cheaper cars with rebuilt titles and stuff, but I wanted to only do clean title cars with at most 130,000 miles, but a lot of them with less than that. There are lots of other great deals out there, and if you know of any, please let everyone know down in the comments. Also, I've just got to say thank you all very much for 10,000 subs. I started YouTube thinking 2 years in I could only have reached like 1,000 subs, but I'm really pleasantly surprised with how the community here has grown. I know thank yous like this get cliche, but I actually mean it. I read every single comment and respond to stuff as soon as I can, and I'm going to continue to for as long as I can keep up with them. New stuff's in the works that's late for the 10K mark, but it's coming very soon, and I hope everyone likes it. Keep an eye out for that on here and Instagram. I also know 10K isn't huge compared to other channels, but I want to inspire anyone else to start things even if they think it won't go anywhere. I didn't start this at the beginning of YouTube. I'm absolutely not rich, and now finishing up an engineering degree, it's not like this is the only thing I get to focus on. There's always going to be that successful person doing something that seems kind of outlandish to other people, and if I can do this, you can do whatever you're passionate about. There's no reason why you can't be that person. I'm super excited for the road to 100K, and other than that, I've got future plans for maybe even another channel down the road and other ventures. But for now, genuinely, I'm incredibly thankful for all the comments, subs, and support. Thank you guys all very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day.